Hi, I'm Nathan. I go by Peteparker, and every week I do comic book reviews because that's the rule at my house. I have to review them if I want to keep buying them. So this review is going to be on X-Men Legacy number 249, written by Mike Carey and art by Rafa Sandoval. So let's get into the story, shall we? Basically, you get 3 stories in one in this one issue. You get the story of Magneto telling... Well, you get 4 stories, because you get the story of Magneto telling Rogue about a story that he experienced right after he got out of Auschwitz, the concentration camp. And then you have the story of Frenzy coming to terms with what she experienced in the Age of X universe. And then you have the story of Legion trying to get a hold of his powers and, figure out what he can do and what's coming on the horizon. So there you go. There's 4 stories, technically, in this one book, which is good and bad, right? You would think with 4 stories that the story that Magneto's telling Rogue as like a flashback would be really short, right? But it's actually several pages and lots of detail. So as I was reading this, I exactly said to my wife, "Oh great, just what I want to read in the middle of an X-Men team superhero book is a story about concentration camps." Now that stuff has its place, right? In the Magneto Testament thing, where it's showing who he was and how his family experienced all that. It's got a very serious tone and very serious style to it, sure. But this is, one of the main X-Men books, right? I don't know exactly what the whole point of that story was. I mean, obviously, there is a point to it. But I'll talk a little bit about it. So, X-Men, in the Age of X, Rogue's character, whoever she was, Legacy or whatever, kind of had the hots for the Magneto character, who was the general and in charge of everything, but never acted on it. So she's trying to deal with her feelings that are left over from that, and Magneto's trying to help her deal with those feelings. So he flies her all the way over to the Museum of the Holocaust to show her a picture of this guy and tell her the story behind the picture, the story behind the guy. Basically, he was a really bad dude. He took a bunch of Jews from Auschwitz and killed them and was aiming to preserve their bodies for science so that later on, when people questioned what they were doing, they had proof that the Jews were a lesser race according to them. But as the war was ending and his whole thing was falling apart, he got really scared, and so he tried to escape. And basically, Magneto, as a young boy, hunted him down and made him hang himself for his previous crimes, threatening that Magneto would kill this guy's entire family if he didn't hang himself on his own. So the guy ends up hanging himself. It's a really weird story, and then Magneto explains it to Rogue why he was telling her that Gambit is the better bet for a partner, lover, whatever, and that she should go back to him. She makes him a better person, and they're good for each other. Whereas what Magneto and Rogue had is very different. It was all in part of a dream. And he's kind of a bad guy, was his point. And then he also used that story to say, but if he ever hurts you or anything, just tell him that story that I just told you, and he'll have to deal with me. Basically threatening to, kill his whole family or make him hang himself if he hurts Rogue's feelings during their little escapades or whatever. So, okay. So then they pause from that story, or they stop his flashback story and pause from the story of Rogue and Magneto and talk about Frenzy. And Frenzy is having a hard time letting go of the person that she was in the Age of X universe, because the person that she was badass, like really cool, She was totally let loose. She could do whatever she wanted, pretty much, and you get a lot of character definition about who Frenzy is. I mean, I've heard of Frenzy and seen Frenzy before, but I've never really had any knowledge of the character's backstory or what kind of person she is. So they really go into depth there. And in the end, she decides that the person that she was in the Age of X universe is more of the person that she truly is than the person she's been in reality. And then, so she cuts her hair to make her look like the Age of X character. And then she expresses that she wants to join the X-Men and be on the team. And then the fourth story is Legion getting a hold of his powers. And I'm so happy that they put this in here, because the last time they talked about Legion controlling his powers, it made no sense whatsoever. He could tap into any of his sub-psyches for a few seconds and do something, and they didn't really explain how that works. So this part of the story is totally like explaining how that works, that he's got a minute from the time that he accesses it of full control of his sub-persona's powers, whatever they are, and then he can dial into another one again. So really, it's like a cutoff switch. It's a little thing on his hand. He punches in a number for the persona. Those powers are enacted. He can use them for a minute, and then they're cut off by the switchboard or whatever. And it bypasses his schizophrenia altogether, so that he's always him, but he has access to a multitude of powers. It's a similar idea to, you know, anybody who has had a multitude of powers at their disposal, but, you know, has limitations to them. The one that comes to mind immediately is Spinner, who basically got a new set of mutant powers every day, and then she, right as hers were changing over, she died. She was hoping, she had super speed, she was in the middle of the ocean, and she was hoping for flight because it was changing over, and it happened to be something else, and she died. But so in the middle of testing his powers, Legion tries to access one of them, and it's denied, and they're trying to figure out why that is. So he accesses another set of powers, who just happens to be, or maybe he knew what power. I don't know. It doesn't say that he knows what powers he's trying to access beforehand. But they do have a lot of them mapped out, because they have special names for every single character. And basically, the character that they access knows everything somehow, like a cosmic power of knowing everything, and always answers questions truthfully, but has a limitation to questions or whatever. So they use those questions to try to figure out why Legion couldn't access that other person, and they find out that there's an uprising of personalities within him who are fighting against this new ability he has to dial in or whatever. And they briefly show all these people, and then they talk about one that's the leader down here, named Styx or something. So it's kind of an introduction to all these aspects of Legion's paranoia, psycho, whatever, schizophrenia, there you go, that aren't going to play nice. And then you got a really big ending where they revisit Magneto and Rogue makes her decision about who she's going to be with. And I don't know if you can guess based on the cover or not, but, you know. And there's a decent explanation for that, too. I won't show the last page because it's kind of cool, but basically she's saying that a lot of times girls pick, or people pick, the wrong person for them because that's what they like the most, and they know it's going to end or whatever, or end badly, but that's what they pick. So that's kind of what she's doing. So how did I like this issue, right? There's a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of it is Age of X Fallout. I like how they're trying to hang on to as much from the Age of X situation as possible. Frenzy basically being the same character, then you got Hellion, who's got new arms that he can control really well, then you've got a new, a new old relationship with Rogue and Magneto that's going to continue on. So, you know, those aspects of the story are really cool. What I didn't really care too much for was the whole huge flashback, right? There's one awesome scene and mostly it's the art that's awesome, where you get a really good picture of Magneto as a teenager, more or less, who's come to hunt down this guy and explain that he's going to hunt him down or whatever. And I just thought that the depiction of Magneto that young was really cool, because you don't see that a lot. We've seen him as a child, we've seen him as an old man, and somewhere in between, really. But you don't really see his teenage years all that often, and it's pretty cool. The art there is really cool. But seriously, this whole story is like 6 pages out of this whole thing about that he's so lethal, that he'll go after your family, or he had no qualms about killing people, which I think a lot of people knew about Magneto. Now, I would venture to say that some people who are just jumping on to X-Men in general and seeing Magneto on the good guys team might be a little, confused about that, might not know Magneto's history for, killing people, but most people who know anything about the character know that he's killed lots of people over time. That even when he was taken over, there was an imposter of him in New York. That guy killed a lot of people too, so, whatever. So I don't necessarily think you needed 6 pages to really say that about the character. You probably could have done it in 2, or even just talked about it and people would have got it. But, at least we got some cool pictures in that. The rest of the story, Frenzy, I still don't care about. Even with her, explanation of what her personality is and how she's changing and stuff, I don't know. I can see that they're going to bring her in, and you can tell on later covers, this one in particular, that she's becoming a bigger and bigger part of one of the X-Men teams, so she's going to be around longer. And also, you're going to have Legion around too, so you really have these 2 characters this way. Frenzy and Legion, who are going to be part of the X-Men in the future. They're getting built up to be major players or whatever. While it's cool for Legion to have a multitude of powers to access, it's also kind of cheap, right? You can basically do anything with that. Basically, at push buttons, he can do whatever anybody else can do just because he has access to thousands upon thousands of power sets or whatever. So while it's a kind of cool idea, even with the limitations that they placed on it and what they mapped out really well in this book, it's still like too much. And then, this day and age, it's really hard to bring new characters that haven't already been established that into any book and have people really care about them. It's an ongoing problem. You can't really easily create new characters that people care about, but if you use an older character and kind of change them, then it kind of works out better. So I was feeling that a little bit when I saw all these aspects of his personality. There's all these code names for these people, and I don't particularly care about them, but maybe one will emerge and then it'll be really interesting. But again, they're all in the same person, and they're all aspects of his personality, so how much could you even care about each one individual character? So I like this book, right? I like all the X-Men. I like generally reading about the aftermath of Age of X, how it really affected them. That's all great. But at the same time, this book was all over the place, and there was this huge chunk of a long, older story basically telling me information that I already knew. So there you go. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 just because of that. It's an average book. I'm sure it'll have some ups and downs coming up. I think I really enjoyed the last one, and I'll probably enjoy some more. I probably won't stop buying it, but there you go. 3 out of 5, just average on this one, even though you got a lot of different stories. So you can check out my other reviews by following Peteparker or Spidey207 based on where you saw this. If you saw it on YouTube, it's Spidey207. If you saw it anywhere else, it's posted by Peteparker. So just take a look for those names elsewhere, and you'll probably find a lot of other reviews that I've been doing, because I've been doing this for a couple weeks now. So there you go. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.